Thank you. We were paused.
Okay.
So it's 7:01. The Board of Selectmen has convened, conducted the Pledge of Allegiance and approval of the agenda. We're on to agenda item 5, which is approval of the meeting minutes of May 21st.
I did find on page 2, under public participation, James Barton, his address should be 108 Main Street and not 107. I also did find on page 8, under tax refunds, there was not a second listed, and I believe Selectman Nordell was the second on that motion.
Any other corrections? So a motion would be in order to accept the minutes as amended.
Sarah Muska, Selectman, I'll move to approve the meeting minutes of May 21st, 2020 as amended.
Is there a second?
Selectman Nordell will second that.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further corrections? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so we're on to public participation. This is one of the public's 2 opportunities to address the board. Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on to communications. In your packet, you'll find a communication from Blaine Simpkins Jr. to the board, indicating his intention to resign as town fire marshal effective June 1st at 1 o'clock. So Blaine has opted to separate from the town. We wish him luck in whatever he's doing next. 7B, because there was the absence, and by the way, this was received by my office on the 29th, so that was, I think, 4 days notice. So with that, there was a need to fill that position on an interim basis in short order so that there was at least a fire marshal of record. So I asked Warehouse Point Fire Marshal Rich Austin to serve in that capacity on an interim basis while we figure out what and how we're going to do to fill that position. And he graciously agreed to do that. Certainly I thank him for that. And that appointment letter that I wrote designating him as an interim fire marshal until the board names a new one is included in 7B.
Jason?
Yes.
Sarah Muska, Selectman. Just reading Mr. Simpkins' letter to the board here. Are we going to pursue trying to obtain those records that he has?
We have already.
Oh, you have already. Okay, great.
No, clarification. We have pursued that already. I'm not sure we have acquired them already.
Okay, thank you.
Fire Marshal Austin was at my office today and picked up a thumb drive to hook up with Blaine and transfer them over. The working assumption is that they use the same firehouse software in Broadbrook that's used in Warehouse Point. So it should be, the intention and the hope is that it'll be a relatively smooth process for Rich to get up to speed, or at least some snapshot on where things are in short order.
Okay. Will we be posting that position soon?
Yes,
or?
but we need to talk about that and what that process would be. The last time, well, I mean, this is a great place to do that. I guess not. So the last time the position was filled without being posted, my intention, and I've asked this to several people who are interested in it, my intention would be to do a posting and an interview process by the board as open and transparent as we can be. I know that the last time it was done where just the preferred candidate was tapped on the shoulder was not well received by members of the public. So hoping to learn from the mistakes of our predecessors in these roles, an open competitive posted, fair process, I think would be most appropriate. We've started working on collecting points for a job posting. The town of Vernon has one that is applicable. So my intention is to post that and do interviews with all of us and the candidates who express interest.
Thanks.
Charlie?
Selectman Nordell here. Jason, just a point of notation. As it is the fire marshal on the Warehouse Point side of town, we have a difficult time keeping up with regular inspections and things of that note. So I'm just hoping that we pursue this in a quick manner so that he can continue on his regular duties on the Warehouse Point side of town and is only used in extreme emergency purposes on the Broadbrook side of town.
Well, certainly we're hoping that there aren't extreme emergency circumstances. But one of the major upsides that Rich can fill for us in the short term is that he's an active participant in my economic development meetings. So he's familiar with the approval softwares. He's a participant in cluster meetings and senior staff meetings. And there should be some continuity there that will be helpful as we figure out what we're doing next. The next item, 7C, is, so this is something that the town clerk had asked be put on the agenda, and upon reflection of what the statute says, it's not a selectman's function. It's a appointment by the town clerk for a sub-registrar of vital statistics, which is somebody who typically works in a funeral home or someplace like that. Any place that's taking possession of a decedent's body or remains or cremains. The town clerk can appoint those sub-registrars upon the written acceptance of the municipal CEO. So what I have here is my letter accepting her designation of Mr. McGoldrick, and attached to that is her appointment of Mr. McGoldrick. So this satisfies what the statute requires us to do. But I just wanted you guys to be aware of it. This is a pro forma thing that doesn't require any action at all from the board. But it's an FYI. Okay, I think our next item of business is 9B, fire service funding. This is not an issue that is new to any of us. There have been conversations that I've had for a number of years, most recently a pretty in-depth conversation in February, and 4 options were outlined. Sarah put together some information that is largely based on the 8th Utilities District or the circumstances in Manchester, including the 8th Utilities District, as a conversation point. So I turn it over to her and have her fill in any color she'd like.
Thank you. Sarah Muska, Selectmen. So as the first Selectman said, we all currently know where we stand with fire services here in East Windsor. The Broadbrook Fire Department is funded through the town budget, which is paid for by all taxpayers in town, including Warehouse Point residents, which are then taxed from their fire district. So they are essentially being taxed twice. We did have that informational forum in February, and we're now in June, and we're still in the same spot as we were then. I know we've had a lot going on due to COVID and other things, but I kind of wanted to take the initiative and look into Manchester and see if we can get the ball rolling and see if this is a viable solution for our town. So I did look into what Manchester does. They have 2 fire districts. One is operated by the town, which is the South Manchester Fire District, and one is operated independently of the town, which is the 8th Utilities District. The Town of Manchester Board of Directors adopts a budget and sets a mill rate for their entire town, including their public works, their police, things that are used by everyone, minus fire services. And they then adopt a separate budget and set a mill rate for fire services for the South Manchester Fire District. And that is only paid by property owners that live within that district. Then there's the 8th Utilities District, and their board, which would essentially be similar to the Warehouse Point Fire District, adopts a budget and sets their mill rate, and that is only paid by property owners in that district. So their general town budget is doesn't have any fire services in it. It's paid by the whole town, and then each district taxes their residents separately. Essentially in this, the Board of Selectmen would act as the Board of Fire Commissioners for Broadbrook, which would essentially be like the South Manchester Fire District. And it's important to note that the money that is currently allocated for the Broadbrook Fire Department, which is in the budget, would not get lost because it would essentially go into a separate fund that would be used for Broadbrook. So that's just a summary of what I took from Manchester. I wanted to see if it is something that we can do here in town to equalize taxation, something that's fair for the whole town for paying for fire services. I just wanted to know if it's viable, what our next steps are, and where we would go from here, just because I don't want this issue to get ignored. I do want this, board to work together and come up with a solution.
So I had a conversation with the town manager in the town of Manchester and asked him, because this was the model that was initially considered when the separation occurred 5 years ago and then disproven as feasible. I said to him, like, how are you doing this? How did you go about being able to levy a separate fire tax within the town government for fire tax? And he said that we don't. What they do is effectively they've done the second fire district model. So the South Manchester Fire District is a separate fire district that is accountable to the board of directors for the town of Manchester. That's their town council. Their board of selectmen is the board of directors. So those folks function as the fire commissioners for the South Manchester Fire District. And when they levy a tax or make an appropriation, it's against the non-general fund line, a non-general fund, so that there are no town-wide taxes that are going into it. There are taxes that are coming into it through that special services district that would effectively be, if we were to set up the Broadbrook Fire District, it would function that way. The only thing that the town funds, which wouldn't be the case in our town, is there is a tax levied and paid for through the general fund dollars for ambulatory services, EMS services. That's run through the town's general fund budget. The 8th Utilities District has a tax that they levy. The South Manchester Fire District has a tax that they levy, and it's managed by the same people who manage the town government, and it's accounted for separately within town finances. So it's not part of the general fund. That's how they're able to do it. Town manager Shanley said that it's not always the smoothest system, and that it certainly has not alleviated the problems that they have. But the long and short of it is, the circumstance that we could emulate there is effectively the establishment of a separate fire district outside of the Warehouse Point Fire District corporate limits. So I also have had conversations with the leadership of the Broadbrook Fire Department to determine if they would be amenable to that. And without making any commitments and with some concerns about how it ultimately would be structured, in concept, they would be open to having that conversation. What they are concerned about, as I think everybody could appreciate, is they don't want to lose their 125 years of heritage and tradition and their sense of purpose. What they do, they understand what the circumstances are, but I think we could structure it in such a way, if we were to go down this route, we could structure it in such a way so that the organization would still be run by the Broadbrook Fire Department, but the finances would run through a newly established Board of Fire Commissioners that my suggestion was just simply be the Board of Selectmen. Accountable to the voters every 2 years. They go through effectively the same budget process that they go through now, except utilizing a different taxing structure. So there's some accountability, there's a governance system, but they don't lose that institutional character that's important to organizations like this. I talked to him for about 3 hours yesterday. Charlie.
Just so I'm clear, is it possible that this could actually be structured in two different ways? One being that the Broadbrook Fire Department establishes their own district and their own set of commissioners, just like Warehouse Point. And then this would, essentially, we would have two different districts just within town, but they'd be a lot like the way Warehouse Point is run. Or, like you said, a district is established as Broadbrook, but run by the Board of Selectmen being in charge of finances. I understand where they're coming from with their, losing their, years, their tradition, and and what they have going on over there. And I don't have an interest in interfering with that. What I'm interested in is solving this taxation issue. However, I want it solved, and I think that any town department that is receiving money from the town as a whole, taxpayers, needs to be a department that is transparent and open to, the scrutiny of the taxpayers.
Okay. I think we lost Maria again. She'll be back. Alan, anything?
Yeah, it's obviously kind of along the lines of what we've been talking about for a little while. I mean, to put into this light, it's I've got some questions, and there's obviously a lot of details of this that we probably won't get to for a while. But I guess my first observation is I don't see any of the leadership from Broadbrook here. I'd love to hear it from them what they want to, what they think about this, or if they've even had time to really look over this document. So beyond that, I mean, I can see little things that we'll have to deal with, like, if you make them a district and put them in the charter and they're getting money, then they need to get an audit, just like Warehouse Point, right? And then it's like kind of raising costs, and you know what I'm saying? Like, so there's a lot of little things we're gonna have to weave through to get to where we're going, I think. But I mean, the idea on its face seems workable.
So just a couple of points there, and I'll start with the easy ones. The way I read the statute, there is not a need for this to be in the charter. This can be established by, and we can work with Pullman on this to work that all out, but it can be established by ordinance and a separate standalone. It doesn't need to be in our charter. We're setting up basically a separate government and overlapping it with just like has happened in Warehouse Point, where this whole double taxation thing, that is a misrepresentation. It's two taxes. It's not a double tax. So the town levies a townwide tax. The district levies another tax on the same property on top of that. What we would be doing is emulating that same thing on the other side. Now, what happened when Warehouse Point separated, that I think a number of people would like some assurances wouldn't happen this time, is that the funding wasn't actually reduced in the last bit of it. So I think that if they were to set something up so that they had a funding mechanism for Broadbrook Fire Service, that the commensurate funding comes out of the budget, which that alleviates the double taxation. It's not spending more money, it's actually spending less money to alleviate the circumstance. I did, as I said, I talked with all three of the leadership department yesterday at length, and one of their, and again, so they haven't had a ton of time, to your point, about digesting this, but a concern that they did have is making the Board of Selectmen the governing body, for the simple reason that, first of all, elections have consequences, and you never know who's going to be sitting in this capacity, but that could just as easily be true in the Warehouse Point district or a new Broadbrook district. The other concern that they had is it's conceivable that all 5 elected selectmen could be residents not of the Broadbrook Fire District. So you have people who live outside of it who aren't affected by the decisions that are made, that are tasked with governance. So that was a concern that they had. But there's, you know, there's room you can work there. You can structure it so that it's there's the fire chief of the Broadbrook department, a member elected by the membership, the first selectman, and the two selectmen who are the highest vote getters in the Broadbrook side of town. You know, you could do something like that so that there's like at least some, there's bunches of ways to address the in the weeds stuff. We're talking about the 30,000 foot in terms of is this the direction that we want to go. I don't see a likelihood of the district expanding. I think that that's probably not a feasible option, although we haven't tested it, but I think that's not really likely. This seems to be a consideration for the selectmen to think about. I don't know, the other option, another option would be that I don't think is at all possible, would be the dissolution of the Warehouse Point district, which also doesn't seem politically workable. So although there are options available, the real options that are in front of us are pretty lean.
Agreed.
Did we lose Marie? Very spotty. Lost her again.
When can we go back to having in-town meetings?
Oh, that's probably August. The town hall will be open to the public before we do that. Marie, are you back?
Now, but now I can speak on what we were really talking on.
So you have a pretty poor signal, Marie.
Can she maybe dial in on her phone and call in?
Yeah. Marie, did you hear that?
Want me to call in?
Yeah, the number is on.
Yeah, do you want to call in on my phone? Yeah, okay. I'll use my phone.
Hi, Marie.
Hi. Can you hear me now?
Not better.
Alright, get this little one.
You should disconnect the iPad.
Not in. How's that?
You should disconnect the iPad. There's an echo through there.
All right, hold on.
I got it. How about now?
How's that now? Can you hear
Sounds
me?
better.
Okay. Oh, so on the Warehouse Point, in the Broadbrook Fire Department. I think the best way for us to go is the simplest way is to do what they did in Manchester. But I think we need to bring it to vote to the residents of town. And I agree with what everybody else is saying. But to rectify the taxation issue, I think that's the cleanest way to get it rectified. We can always fine tune things later on down the road if we have to. But
Any other thoughts or comments?
Sarah Muska, Selectmen. So what is our next step? At the next meeting, are we going to, maybe we'll have some time, go through it, see if we have any questions, maybe set up a time with both fire chiefs, or, I just want us to have a plan, going forward, if this is the option that we're considering. I just don't want it to be forgotten and then have us go months and months and, nothing is being done. So I just want to know, like, where we go from here, if we're going to, have it on the next agenda and discuss it again, or what our options are for going forward.
So it would make sense to me that if, unless there's, I mean, I don't know that we're taking an official vote at this point. I think that would come later, but unless there is clear opposition from the members, we would have somebody from Pullman and Comley, probably Attorney Andriana, if he's available, at our next meeting, and maybe include the chiefs from the Broadbrook Fire District. This pathway does not involve Warehouse Point at all. It doesn't affect them. But it does affect the Broadbrook folks. So including Attorney Andriana and, if possible, either the Bancrofts and Chief Arcari would be a good conversation point, so we could start thinking about what an official document might look like. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Selectman Nordell, I agree. Let's just keep the ball rolling and set it up. Let's get the talks continuing and keep stepping in the right direction.
So I would offer 2 points that might become problematic. One is the need to do a town meeting, when and if that arises, depending on what the rules are at that point in time. Really, that's the only one, because the other thing that could be conceivably or the other problem would be that the district borders don't happen to fall nice and neatly along the voting district borders. So that might be problematic in terms of a ballot question in November, if we were to try and do it on a presidential ballot. So some of the timing in the COVID stuff is going to limit, or might limit, timing. But we can certainly get things teed up like we have with a couple of other ordinances that are ready to go as soon as we're able to do it.
Sarah Muska, Selectman. I would definitely be in favor of you calling the attorney and Chief Arcari and the Bancrofts and discussing this with them, and setting up a time for our next meeting or whenever you can.
So that's what we'll do it for our next meeting.
Great.
Comments, concerns, questions? Okay. Is Linda on? Where is my stuff? Linda Collins, are you with us? Okay. I see a Linda there, but she's muted. So the next item, 10A, it's this is an example of a renewal that we need to enter into between the town and the housing authority for pilot payment rates. As you can see, the rate had historically been 10%, but it was reduced to 7%. And that helped the Housing Authority get their financial situation stabilized a number of years ago. The executive director of the Housing Authority has reached out and asked that the board consider entering into a new agreement that extends that 7-year rate. I'm sorry, the 5% rate. Right? Yeah, it's a 5% rate moving forward. Marie was on the Housing Authority for quite some time, so if there is any contract or any comment that you think I overlooked, please feel free to hop in there.
No, I think the goal up at the Housing Authority right from the beginning was the finances were in dire straits up there for a lot of reasons. And we approached the town to reduce the amount that we were paying the pilot money in order for us to try to start saving some money to do some renovations and things up there that needed to be done. We did a lot of other things up there that helped us out financially, and financially we're moving forward, but we're still not quite where we need to be. We're just able at this point to meet our yearly expenses and have a little bit extra, providing we don't have to do any repairs or anything. But we're concerned with the state and everything that's happening that we're not going to get the state grant money moving forward. So if we could go a few more years with 5%, that would assure that that Housing Authority will be solvent for years down the road. I don't think it's a lot to ask to keep it that way. It was normally a longer contract, but because the previous board was going to be out in November, they only made it for a year, if my memory serves me correct. So I would be in favor going forward. Then I sat on the board up there and I know what we've done versus where we are today. So I probably will accuse myself from the vote because I wouldn't want anybody to think that, you know, I'm only doing it because I have a heart up there. And as the liaison, so I'll step down from the vote, but I would encourage everyone to please help them out and continue for our obligation to make sure that we're solving up there and we can remain solvent. Thanks.
Other comments? Okay.
Yeah, I do have a comment. In that letter, it says that that the Housing Authority will provide the town with all the documents and everything to be able to verify that, you know, its financial situation is what it is. Has that been done, or plans for that?
I don't know if that's been done, but as Marie was talking, I was just scribbling out a potential motion that would include the requirement for that to be done to Amy's satisfaction prior to the agreement being extended. I don't think that's unreasonable, and they are pretty transparent and collaborative with us. So I can't imagine why that would be a problem for them to disclose. So along that lines, just the motion that I would recommend is to extend the pilot agreement between the town and the Housing Authority, fixing a pilot rate of 5% for a term of however many years we want to do, pending submission of all necessary documents to the town treasurer. Does that sound reasonable? I'm not offering that as a motion. I'm really asking if that's, you know, where we are.
Yeah, I guess the only thing we haven't really discussed yet is, like, do we want to make it 1 year or 2 years? Or...
Recollection is they were doing 3-year agreements for a while. And then when the last board was in, they shortened them to annual. And I don't know that that's true, but that's my recollection. Do you remember voting on this when you were on the last time?
Yeah, it's actually when there was a bit of a conflict back then, and, you know, there was a hard time. It was one of those things where nobody could find the contract or the agreement, or there was some dispute about it, and it all got straightened down, and it was nice to see that it looks like everything's still kind of flowing, you know, pretty good, and everybody knows where their boundaries are and everything. So, yeah, I think looks like, you know, that was ironed out and progress has been made. But yeah, I would agree with, you know, more than a year. 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 works for me. I mean, doesn't, I wouldn't want to go too far out, but I mean, that works.
So you said, I'm sorry, you said 2 or 3 worked for you? 3?
3.
Anybody else have thoughts on duration? I'm good with 3.
I wouldn't have a problem. I'm good with 3. That's what it used to be when we first set it up.
I'm fine with 3 as well.
Charlie?
Selectman Nordell is in favor of 3.
Okay. So does anybody want to make a motion, or do you want me to restate what I had written?
I think we can make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to extend the pilot program payment rate for the next 3 years at 5%, pursuant to the agreed upon review of the Housing Authority bank accounts and financial controls as might be required by the town treasurer. How's that?
Good enough for
3
government.
years.
Is there a second?
Sarah Muska, Selectmen, I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Selectman Baker?
Aye.
Selectman Muska?
Aye.
Selectman Nordell?
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza?
Many years. I just think it's the right thing to do.
So you broke up there at the beginning. Can you just say how you vote?
I'm going to accuse myself because I wouldn't
Okay.
want a conflict of interest.
So Peg, did you get that? Marie abstains so as to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Approval of tax refunds.
But thank you, David. Yes.
Sarah Muska, Selectmen, I'll move to approve the tax refunds totaling $813.30.
Second. Alan Baker.
All those in favor of approval of tax refunds? Selectman Baker?
Aye.
Selectman Muska?
Aye.
Selectman Nordell?
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza?
Aye.
Okay. We will go to Selectmen's reports. You'll notice that Alan is not last, so I will not skip time. Okay, so on Monday, the 25th, we had a very quiet Memorial Day ceremony on the Veterans Memorial Green. About 25 people attended with remarks from Veterans Commission Chairman Jim Barton and me, and a prayerful reflection by Pastor Calderon. It was a brief, very low-key event that allowed us to commemorate the day and still observe the social distancing guidelines as set forth by the state. On the 27th, the town held its first drive-through COVID-19 testing at East Windsor High School in partnership with Priority Urgent Care. These are now going to be held on a weekly basis on Wednesdays from 10 to 3 at the high school, so long as demand supports doing that. We've had more than 200 people tested so far over the 2 weeks that it's been offered. Some people have done it more than once, which is a great way of tracking new infections. So that is not something that we're looking to deter at all. People can get tested as often as they choose to, and that's a very good thing to do. As I previously noted, the town has entered into an agreement with a large-scale solar development project. On June 9th, the project developer will be presenting an informal presentation to the Planning and Zoning Commission jointly with the Wetlands Commission. The presentation is open to the public to view on the PZC Zoom meeting. And because of this is a siting council cited project, local zoning, local wetlands regulations do not apply. The state has supremacy. So the developers are doing this as a courtesy to the town to solicit feedback, although they, quite honestly, it would be within their rights not to do so. Again, they've been just great partners so far, very collaborative, very open and transparent, and I'm excited to see them put on their presentation on Tuesday night. In the last 2 weeks, we've had conversations with 2 other solar developers looking at potentially 3 sites in the town, all of which would be much smaller in development. While not all solar projects would necessarily be a good fit for our community, we are working hard to welcome those that are. These are good ways for the town to realize economic gains that's low impact on municipal services and good for the generation of renewable energies. As I think I've mentioned before, I hold weekly development cluster meeting or department cluster meetings where departments with overlapping jurisdiction get together to discuss and address issues affecting one or several of those departments. In this week's economic development cluster meeting, we discussed concepts that will be put into practice soon. The first is the implementation of what are known as pre-development meetings, which is where anyone looking to do a development project in town will be given an opportunity to meet collectively with department heads, so the department heads can explain what their requirements are, and the developer can ask of the development heads gathered together any questions or concerns that he may have. Many communities use these to make the approval process smoother for applicants, and we're going to start implementing that very soon. The other new process that will be implemented is the institution of what's called a developer's agreement, which is a contract between a developer and the town, making clear at the outset of larger scale developments what developers would be responsible for. On several occasions, the absence of these agreements has left the town responsible for the completion of road work that can end up costing taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so this is a practice that a lot of towns also use. We need to put that in place so that we're protecting our taxpayers from having to carry the burden of a developer who does 85% of the work and then walks away. The town is continuing to work towards upgrading both our land use permitting software and our GIS system, with target dates of July 1 for both software conversions to go live. These are exciting for several reasons. The permitting software will be forward-facing, which means that applicants will be able to see which departments have approved their applications and which haven't, thus minimizing bureaucratic bottlenecking. And the GIS conversion will be more user-friendly and have updated layers and more useful information that people can do when examining parcels initially. These are both long overdue upgrades, and we're excited to get those in place. And as I mentioned under communications, as of June 1st, Blaine Simpkins Jr. has resigned as the town fire marshal. While we're sad to see Blaine move on to other opportunities, we wish him well and thank him for his service to our community. In the interim, Warehouse Point Fire Marshal Rich Austin has agreed to cover duties on this side of town until the Board of Selectmen appoints a new permanent town fire marshal. That's all I have. Respectfully submitted. Marie. Marie. I'm not sure if she's frozen or just muted.
I'm muted. I'm glad to see the opening of businesses are finally happening slowly, which is a good sign of continued decline in the cases of COVID-19. Remember, whenever possible, to support local businesses. Remember, we are one community. We should be united for a better tomorrow. On May 21st, I attended the parade that ran around the Broadbrook side of town. It was nice to see people actually out waving with smiles on their faces. Attended that evening's Board of Selectmen meeting on the 25th. As Jason said, I was honored to be able to attend the Memorial Day ceremony down in Warehouse Point on May.
Did we lose her mid-report? Okay. Oh, Marie, are you back?
Right back. They discussed the program in their budget before they went in for executive session on May 20th, via Zoom, and Sarah will comment on that. On 27th, June 2nd, I met with the registers of voters to go over the upcoming primary in November elections. That changes on a daily basis, but a recent change that's important is deadline petitions is now 11 from 1 to 4, and was changed from the original date of June 9th. and their public service announcements are supposed to be forthcoming. June 3rd, Bradwick Mill site canceled their meeting. The Economic Development Commission met. Unfortunately, due to some personal issues, I wasn't able to attend that. I did have some communications on Facebook with a couple of people that have concerns about the cemetery over in Warehouse Point. It hasn't been maintained to their pleasure. I haven't had the opportunity to drive over there and look. I'm back. My internet service is terrible. I did have an opportunity to call the numbers that were online for the Cemetery Association chairperson. Unfortunately, that number is no good. I called another number that I got off of the computer, and there's been no response. So if anybody knows how to get anybody in charge of the Cemetery Association, if they could please address those issues, I could use your help. Thanks.
Maria, I talked to Bob Rybeck about that. They had it resolved 2 days ago.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
Yep. Sarah?
On Saturday, May 23rd, I assisted the Veterans Commission and the American Legion with their Drive Up mask giveaway that took place at the American Legion Post 40. We proudly gave out hundreds of masks to many gracious and thankful people, several of which work in the healthcare field and found it extremely difficult to obtain masks. On Monday, May 25th, I also attended the small socially distanced Memorial Day ceremony held at the Joseph Tracy Memorial Green. It was a beautiful tribute to those brave men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. On Tuesday, May 26th, the Warehouse Point Fire District held a drive-through vote to determine if the district should be governed under Chapter 105 of the Connecticut General Statutes. There were 67 total votes, 64 voting in favor and 3 voting no. The district will hold a special meeting on Tuesday, June 9th, where they will accept nominations for 3 open positions on the Warehouse Point Fire District Board of Commissioners. One of those is a 1-year term and 2 of those are 3-year terms. Anyone expressing interest is asked to please attend that meeting, which will be held on Zoom. The election will take place on June 29th in a drive-through voting process. Although I miss seeing all of you in person, since the meetings have been held on Zoom, I was able to attend 3 meetings on Wednesday, May 27th. The Board of Finance met and Town Treasurer Amy O'Toole reported that $2.7 million in ECS money came in, and we made our revenue budget for the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget, which is great news. Our new accounting software, Munis, is up and running on the town side, and the Board of Education will be converted over by July 1st. The Board of Education held their regular meeting, and Superintendent Dr. Christine DeBarge reported that no guidelines in regards to COVID-19 have been given to the school districts for the fall as of yet. She discussed some of the recommendations for summer school, and they include the use of face shields, masks, and plexiglass dividers, touchless entrance doors and faucets, and the possible use of infrared thermometers, which cost $80 to $200 each. The last day of school is still officially June 18th, as 180 days of school will be completed. Our school district did a great job of beginning distance learning in a prompt manner, where other districts had to actually add on days to their calendars to reach the 180-day mark. I was then able to catch the tail end of the Beautification Committee meeting, where I enjoyed hearing about the plans of the new walking trail at the Historical Society, and I'm sure Selectman Nordell will touch on that in his report. And beginning on June 1st and going through August 31st, I have made a pledge to participate in the Hearts Around Connecticut Challenge to run a 500K to benefit the Connecticut Food Bank to help alleviate hunger in Connecticut. This is a great cause that will assist families to ensure that they are receiving the proper nourishment and help out those that have lost jobs due to the pandemic. I've completed 12.18 miles thus far, and I only have 298 more to go.
I was just doing the math on that. I was like, how many is that?
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Selectman Baker.
Thank you. So I went to the wetlands meeting last night. They had a fairly light schedule, but they did approve the wetlands permit for the business expansion on Newberry Road. And they'll be accepting another application at a special meeting probably next week. This evening, before this meeting, I went to the pension meeting where we approved an RFP to go out and offer some firms to bid on the fiduciary services for our 401A and our 457. So, we'll be working on that over the next few months, I'm sure. And that's all I have for you tonight.
I'm tempted to intentionally skip Charlie, but
That's fine.
Selectman Nordell.
Selectman Nordell here. Okay, like Jason, Sarah, and Marie mentioned, I also was at the Town Green in Morales Point on Memorial Day and attended the unsolicited, socially distanced ceremony put on by the Veterans Commission and the American Legion Post 40. Sarah Muska and myself recorded the small ceremony so that my wife Christina could compile a video for broadcast later that day on Facebook Live for all to enjoy. And I thank for the Veterans Commission and the American Legion for putting that on despite all of the obstacles. On May 26th, the Warehouse Point Fire District had 67 voters participate in a drive-through vote to easily pass 64-3, a decision for them to be governed by Chapter 105 instead of its outdated Special Act of 1911. I was really impressed as to how smooth that went. The drive-through voting went very smoothly, and I think everybody was glad to have participated in that. May 27th, I attended the Beautification Committee. They discussed the possibilities of future projects and the direction they wanted to move forward in, prioritizing projects that could be done even though the pandemic is still going on. Like Sarah had mentioned, they did discuss the possibility of helping with the Historical Society with some of their endeavors in sprucing up the place and the walking trails that they're currently working on. The East Windsor PTO, which was in serious danger of becoming no more, has barely managed to fill all officer positions except vice president. If anyone's interested in this position, please email ewpto@aol.com. They will be voting on these positions soon. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Next is public participation. This is the public's second opportunity to address the board. Are there any members of the public who would like to say anything?
Yes, Tom Lansner, 27 Laurel Circle. I just wanted to pass on that 3 of my neighbors here in Warehouse Point had all received the 5 Village Voice. We're very appreciative of the new publication and very complimentary as to the content. So I thought you'd be pleased to hear that.
I am, thank you. We're already hard at work on the second edition. Any other public comment? Okay, then the board will go into executive session. Is there a motion?
Sarah Muska, Selectmen, I'll move that we go into executive session.
Second. Alan.
All in favor? Selectman Baker. Selectman Baker voted yes. Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
Okay, we're going to go into executive session. Peg, there will be votes afterwards. But you can either check out the video or we can catch up tomorrow.
Okay, sounds great.
Thanks.
It's just the Board of Selectmen going in, right?
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
It is 8:21. We are out of executive session. We do have 2 personnel matters to address. For the first one, I'll call on Selectman Baker.
Make a motion that we approve the disability retirement pension application with Jeffrey Capron on 7/1/2020 on the conditions of his application for that pension and no, I'll leave it there.
The application for the pension, a letter of resignation, and a signed settlement agreement.
Oh, and a letter of resignation and a signed settlement agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Sarah Muska, Selectmen, I'll second.
So I got Marie first, and she's got connectivity right now, so we're going to give it to her.
Okay.
So the motion has been made by Alan, seconded by Marie. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? So I would just like to thank Officer Capon for his many years of service to the town of East Windsor and wish him the very best in whatever comes next for him, he and his family. All those in favor, I will call the roll. Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
So carried. For personnel matter number 2, I would call on Selectman Muska.
Selectman Sarah Muska, I'll move to accept the engagement letter between the town of East Windsor and attorneys Pullman and Comley for a 3-year term effective July 1st, 2020, expiring June 30th, 2023.
Is there a second?
Selectman Nordell will second that motion.
Motion made by Sarah, seconded by Charlie. Any discussion? All those in favor, I will call the roll. Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
Motion clearly passes. Last item is adjournment. Is there a motion?
Selectman
moved.
Nordell will make a motion to adjourn.
Moved by Alan. Is there a
Ooh.
second? Is there a second?
Sarah Muska, Selectmen, I'll second.
Moved by Alan, seconded by Sarah. All those in favor of adjournment, Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned at 8:24. Good job tonight, guys.